Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Back to Basics Gaming. Before we get back to the basics, let's take a quick trip to memory lane and discuss another horror movie icon, Dracula. Though not the first vampire found in literature and stories, he is still the most famous of all. Dracula has had various reimaginings in books, games, movies, and more. I'm assuming most of you know who Dracula is, so I won't take too much time to talk about him in the intro. In 1992, a new version of Dracula was released in theaters, and it was a financial success. It starred Anthony Hopkins, Winona Ryder, Gary Oldman, whom for a good portion of the movie looks really stupid, and probably the biggest miscast for this movie, Keanu Reeves.
No way. No way.
Yes way!
Bram Stoker's Dracula had a nice dark tone and setting, and visually, it was awesome to look at. I never read the original novel, which was released in 1897, so I don't know how close this movie derives or deviates from the source material. Personally, for myself, besides loving the visuals for this one, I'd rather watch Dracula from the 30s, or hell, even Nosferatu. The film also had a lot of erotic tones to it as well, and it even had some rape scenes too. It was a pretty adult movie worthy of bearing the R rating. But it was a big event when this movie came out, and it made a ton of money, meaning that whoever could cash in on this idea was on board, and that's why we're here today. We're going to check out a few Dracula games based off of the movie spanning throughout the Sega library and see if its vampiric legacy should rule the night sky, or if we need to drive a stake through it and let the morning sun turn it to dust. First up on our list is Bram Stoker's Dracula on Sega CD. The game starts with random clips from the movie, and the quality is really bad and crappy. Adding it in there doesn't really even seem necessary, but they possibly want to show off the fact that their hardware would allow you to see small movies. Afterwards, some dude will start talking to you or reading to you, and he pretty much sets the tone and even gives you a tidbit of game advice before starting the level. I think this old guy is shown before the start of every level, but I didn't get too far in here, and you'll see why. So before we begin, the game gives us the stage name and shows us our lives and continues. When the game officially starts, you assume the role of Jonathan Harker, whom was portrayed by Keanu Reeves in the movie.
We got this problem. Up here.
Unlike in the movie, Harker seems to be quite capable of performing many types of karate moves, such as jabs, sweeps, a soccer ball kick, and even a Karate Kid's signature crane kick. Even when I was moving from one screen to the other, Harker did some weird karate kick, and at first I thought I accidentally triggered this move because I was randomly pushing buttons waiting to get through the door. So I tried and tried again to pull it off, but to no avail. This kick right here is just an animation the game does for him every now and again. Seriously, Harker is a fucking karate master.
I know Kung Fu.
Other versions of this game give you swords, rocks, and guns, but fuck that, man, this is Sega CD. We have Neo using his bare fists in our enemy roster of gypsies, bats, and birds. There's also a few hazards such as Swamp Thing over here trying to reach out and fuck with you, holes, and even bear traps. And my god, them fucking bear traps. Right at this part is my first encounter with one. I can clearly see the fucking thing, and I kinda try to kick it to activate it and move it, but nothing. I know my jump is decent when going straight up in the air, but not so good when trying to jump across things. So, for the love of fuck, I try to jump over it, but just end up activating this one and every single other one of these damn things in the level. Total bullshit. And this game seems to like its hazards as well, because a level boss isn't even what I would consider a boss. It's just another hazard. All it is lightning or energy or whatever coming from the sky and knocking you over. And this shit lasts about a minute too, so stay as far away from it as possible, because when it sparks out, it has a fairly large blasting radius. You would think, as long as you're in between two of them, you would be safe, since there is indication where the next one is striking. But no, you're pretty much fucked if you get caught up like I did here. I also feel that sometimes the enemies that come out all at once from different directions can be a bit overwhelming for the player, because not all of them are attacking from the same height. For example, some enemies are about head level, so a punch will take them out, and sometimes you get enemies on the ground, so the soccer ball kick works well. But when you throw 3 different enemies that need 3 different attacks at you all at once, it gets annoying. I suppose you could master the controls and become the ultimate Sega CD Bram Stoker master, but who in their right fucking mind would want to do that? Oh, and when you're trying to hit certain enemies, the hit detection is all sorts of fucked as well. I'm right next to this guy, clearly throwing my punch, and it's just going straight through him. Not until I decided to soccer ball kick him in the shin did I begin to do some damage. And yeah, I did my fair share of dying in this game. The nice thing about losing a life in this game is that when you're on the ground and the screen turns red, you can bring yourself back up at any time with the press of a button. Well, any time provided you have the extra lives. This isn't just useful in the sense of resurrecting you right where you died, but it's also helpful because certain enemies that kill you will leave the screen, allowing you to get up and not have to deal with them anymore. Sure, that's kind of a punk bitch thing to do, but hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. I guess while I'm on the positive outlook on this game for now, the backgrounds are very nice. Sometimes it moves with you and gives you that nice movie feeling. And the digitized Harker character also looks good for what it's worth. Sound and music are also intact and do fit the mood as well. And the platforming isn't too horrid either, but I don't think this game has much of it, though I wouldn't know for sure. After beating the level, you'll be rewarded with another cutscene from the movie, a creepy one at that, and then the old guy will start talking to you again, and offer another small piece of advice before entering Dracula's castle. Level 2 is called The Search for Dracula, which makes absolutely no sense, because the beginning cutscene for the stage clearly shows Harker and Dracula in the same room together. But anyways, you continue your quest of kicking mostly smaller things around, such as spiders, rats, and bats. We also get a few new enemies in stage 2 as well, such as zombies that spit puke at you and create puddles of puke, skeleton warrior carrying a mace and shield, ghosts, and bucks. The zombies are going to be the biggest and most annoying threat. Their puke attack hurts like fuck, and the puke puddle is even worse, and you're in real trouble if you got 2 of them on each side of you. It's almost a guaranteed death to any newcomer. The skeleton warrior is a cheap bitch as well, because it seems like no matter what I tried to do, he always got that first hit in on me. Granted, that will be the only hit he gets off on you since a quick combo drops them, but still, it's cheap and annoying. The ghosts will just have you kicking air randomly, since they mostly appear out of nowhere. Mostly. In the library area, we'll be having you kicking and dodging literature. I certainly hope kicking around literature was not present in the novel. Like I said, in this game, you're gonna die. A lot. And when you do, you have your continues to fall back on, which will then force you to start the stage over. The screen and the sound they picked for Harker leading into a game over was strange. Here's the movie footage. And here's the game using the same footage after you use all lives. He doesn't even sound human. It's funny and creepy all at the same time. When you're about 75% done with the level, you'll come across this gargoyle monster. I'm guessing he was a sub-boss or something of that nature because he takes a generous amount of hits compared to the other enemies. But all I had to do was Ralph Macchio his ass over and over again until he dropped. After about another room or so, you'll finally find Dracula. Considering I didn't really know his movement pattern and was already fed up from this game, he kicked my ass. He has a very strong force field attack, and he can throw fire that will bounce off the ceiling or crawl along the floor. But by far, the most annoying thing he likes to do is just grab you and hold you in place. He can't move, all he can do is button mash and get pissed because he's fighting like a little girl. I didn't bother wanting to continue after he handed me my own ass on a platter. This game had promise at first sight, but it was not most excellent.
Whoa!
Next up, we'll check out the Game Gear version of Dracula. Before starting out the game, I'm at a screen that says Start or Easy. Usually you get some sort of option, but I'll just leave everything alone here and press Start. When the game starts up, they just plop you onto the screen. I'm pretty sure we're playing as Harker once again as well. This time he's equipped with a knife too. The first thing I encounter is a Mario block on the ground. It looks just like it. It's an obvious nod to the game for sure. Badass. Upon opening it, a big old heart pops out and starts floating to the top of the screen. Here's our first problem already. When you hit the Mario blocks, all the items start to float and go away forever if you're not quick enough. There's no logic behind it other than to be cheap. If you're going to reward the player with something once they come into contact with the box, then let them have the fucking reward. Don't be cheap and just take it away. That would be like me going into someone's house and showing their kid an awesome toy, but just hover it over their heads so it's just barely out of their grasp and then destroying it.
No fair.
And look, I just started the level and grabbed the heart and it gave me another unit of life. The game couldn't even give you full life upon starting. Again, how cheap is that? That would be like starting a level in Mega Man with only half of your health bar intact. Total bullshit. Unacceptable. Anyways, once it gets dark out, all the baddies come out to say hi, such as bats, skeletons, hands, and other cliche bullshit. The game also has its fair share of hazards, such as spikes and fire pits as well. The controls are pretty responsive, and you're not going to be using your knife too long, because the game gives you weapon upgrades, such as an axe, rocks, and torches. Wow, that was fast. I'm already back to throwing torches again, huh? Harker also has an amazing jump. He jumps so damn high, he would make Mario on steroids look pathetic. Anyways, once you get to the first boss, which I guess is just some creepy shadow creature, simply just study its pattern and use the platform to dodge it. It doesn't shoot anything at you and doesn't move at a ridiculous speed, so you can tell which way it's headed. Give it a few whacks and be on your way. Once I got to the second boss, I didn't have any more lives. You only get 3 and no continues, so I wasn't able to beat this chick here, and it was game over after that. After your last life, the game shows a picture of Harker dead, and then the game's credits start to roll. I'm not sure if I have ever seen this before, but either way, who in the hell wants to look at credits right after they fucking lost a game? Usually, you either immediately restart and try again, or shut off the game. Not fucking stare at credits for a couple minutes. What's even funnier than this is that I was going to do an NES review for Dracula as well, but the Game Gear is literally the same thing, just better graphics. But after I died on the NES version, I did notice the programmer's name. It's Skunk. Yep, Skunk. A fitting name to a game that fucking stinks. Okay, well, we still got one last game to visit, so let's keep moving. Last but certainly not least is our final game, Bram Stoker's Dracula on the Sega Genesis. When the game starts up, it'll take you to an options menu. Looks pretty standard here. They have difficulty, lives, and even health. That's actually pretty cool, because not many games offer health increase or decrease. Well, I intended to give myself max lives and max health, but look, if you give yourself max value of lives, the health will decrease, and vice versa as well. Max out health and your lives will decrease. Doesn't this kind of come off as pointless? It just cancels each other out. I mean, why even bother putting it there if you're still going to govern it in some sort of way? Anyways, when you start up the game, the player will control Harker. The first thing I literally did in this game was kill some drunk guy sleeping on the floor. I'm not even kidding, either he's sleeping or already dead. Either way, that's kinda fucked. In this version, Harker has a sword. He can get other weapons as well, which we will get to later. The sword isn't too bad, but Harker has this downward slash, and that's it. There's no other way to use this damn sword. So for enemies that fly or require you to hit them in a certain area, you're going to have to jump up in this awkward fashion and use it. And I wouldn't dwell too much on this factor, but when you do finally get another weapon, you only get to use it for a certain number of times. That is if you don't die beforehand, because say goodbye to it if you do. And trust me, you will, because this game has enemies all over the place and no invulnerability frame. So, here I am in the first area just swatting away at rats and bats in a tavern, killing the occasional drunkard on the floor, when I realize this music playing in the game doesn't seem to fit the whole atmosphere of what one calls Dracula. Seriously, listen to it. This music sounds like it belongs in a weapon shop in some random RPG. Anyways, you'll eventually encounter this random guy in many of the areas you visit, and it shows a random thought bubble from him. Not sure what it means, but you can exit the level after you encounter him. So obviously that's all I care about. Once outside, the ridiculous music will stop and Harker enters a much more darker toned atmosphere. Now you're killing people, spiders, and dodging spikes coming from the ceiling and the ground. Harker also has this weird way of readying his weapon if you hold the attack button. I felt that it was useless because Harker attacks instantly when this button is pressed. There is no need for this feature in the game. Speaking of which, most of the time I played this game, I just decided to keep walking and spamming the attack button over and over just to be ready for what was going to come my way that I couldn't see off screen. Anywho, the boss of this area is the masked carriage driver in the movie. I'm not sure if he is Dracula or not, I guess that's up for debate, but he did that creepy arm extension, like in the movie. Just get into a pissing contest with him until he goes down. Why Harker is fighting this thing, I'm not sure, because he does it in the movie, but I do admit, I did like how he looked. Hell, even the boss music was kind of enjoyable. Another good feature of the game is when you do die, you'll be resurrected on the spot, or very nearby, in case the area is littered with enemies or hazards. Anyways, as far as the other weapons go, Harker can get dynamite, stakes, and a gun. Not sure if there are other weapons to acquire, but as stated earlier, you're only granted to use these items for a small number of times, so just get ready to swing that sword around endlessly. By no means is this game a masterpiece, but it's a lot more bearable than the other installments, and even had some things I like. Besides enjoying the rockin' boss tune, the other areas tend to have a dark, eerie tone to them. So with the exception of the first stage and its RPG music, I actually enjoyed the game's music as well. I also enjoyed the game's bosses for what it's worth, considering I only made it to like the 5th stage before losing all my lives, but they were big, intimidating, and creepy. Also, the weapons would have been better if they weren't so scarce and they didn't disappear after you die. I think the Game Gear version definitely got the weapon system right. So, I guess with decent music and entertaining bosses, I gotta say, it's probably the winner out of the 3 that I've reviewed. It is definitely the best. So I guess with decent music and entertaining bosses, I would definitely say it's the best out of the 3 games in my opinion. Though, surprisingly enough, I've seen that a lot of people actually like the 8-bit installment the most. To each their own. So, that's Bram Stoker's Dracula, spanning across numerous Sega consoles. These games weren't really too good at all, but honestly, I wasn't expecting them to be. As for the game coinciding with the movie, I can't fault it for straying so far away, considering the movie wasn't really full of action and was sort of a twisted, tragic love story. It's kind of hard to make an enjoyable game with just using that material alone. I wanted to keep this review solely focused on Dracula games for the Sega, but I did actually stumble across another Dracula game I was going to originally review, and it's Bram Stoker's Dracula for the computer. And what's even more shocking is that it's actually a first-person shooter as well. I would never have guessed this game existed, but it does. It handles like any standard FPS, except it does have a few puzzles in it, and you have to destroy coffins with holy water. If you like classics, and you like them FPS style, then this game may be right up your alley. Anyways, with all that said, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and as always, thanks for helping me get back to the basics.